So far we know how to factor and solve binomial quadratic equations. We also know how to factor and solve trinomial equations that have a leading coefficient of 1. But what if it's not 1? What if that leading coefficient is something else? So we're going to work with quadratics where the leading coefficient is more than 1. We have some steps that we're going to follow here, and you can see those steps listed 1 through 5, and we have 2 items we're going to look at. And so we're going to look at A, which is factoring and solving, and then on B, we're just going to factor. So we always have to notice, are we asked to just factor or factor and solve? Because if we just have to factor, well, then I don't have to do as many steps to finish what's being asked of me. Okay, so let's go ahead and dig into this, and we'll start with A here. A does say that we need to factor and solve. Now, one thing that's true is right now we have an equation, it's equal to 0. Okay, so if we go up to step 1 says we need to find 2 numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add to equal B. Okay, so probably the best method that you can use for this is going to be the X method that was introduced in the last video, last 2 videos, I should say, and factoring by grouping, which kind of all goes hand in hand. So we're using the X method with some grouping. All right, so first of all, this 2 is our A, this 9 is our B, and this 10 is a C. So we have to take 2 times 10, and we're going to put 20 right here. And then the B is going to go here. So again, following step 1 up here, find 2 numbers that multiply to equal A times C and add up to equal B. So what I have to do, and I'll just kind of make a note here, I have to find 2 numbers that multiply to 20 to add up to 9. Okay, so in thinking about this, and I can kind of show this off at the side here, what makes 20? Well, 1 times 20, 2 times 10, and 4 times 5. So which of those pairs of numbers would work? Well, 4 and 5. Okay, so we have completed step 1. Now step 2 says, along with the x squared term and the c term, write the middle term of the quadratic bx as the sum of the 2 numbers in step number 1. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this 2x squared, bring it down. We're going to leave a little space, put the plus 10. Still an equation, so that's why the equal 0 is there. And we're going to change 9x into 4x plus 5x. So you'll notice that the equation in orange there that I just wrote is the same equation as up above. It just looks a little bit different. And that's step 2. Step 3 says group the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms together. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so these first 2 terms, let's find the greatest common factor. Well, the greatest common factor of 2x squared and 4x is 2x. Now, if I take a 2x out of both of those first 2 terms, that's going to leave an x plus 2. Now, I need to look at the 5x plus 10 part and think, what do those have in common? Well, the greatest common factor of 5x and 10 is 5. Now, if I've done this right, I should have an x plus 2 in parentheses next to it. And I do. Because 5 times the quantity x plus 2 is 5x plus 10. And that's step 3. So step 4 says one expression should appear twice, and it does, x plus 2. So here's an x plus 2, and here's an x plus 2. It's almost like we're going to take the greatest common factor of 2x times x plus 2 and 5 times x plus 2. In fact, that's really what we're doing. So one of our factors is going to be x plus 2. The other factor is going to be what's left, which is this 2x plus 5. So right there, those are my two factors. And we've done step 4. Now, step 5 says if we have to solve, which we do here, we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. So as you're about done with Algebra 1, can we do these by looking at them? Well, it's okay to show the work if you want to. Let's see, we're going to have to subtract 2 from both sides here. Get x equals -2. Think about the 2 steps needed to solve 2x plus 5 equals 0. I'm going to have to subtract 5 and divide by 2. Doing that gives me -5/2. And that's step 5. And that's the process that we need to go through. So let's go ahead and go through this one more time. Now you'll notice on B that it just says factor. It's not equal to 0. So that kind of tips us off a little bit as well. Okay. All right. So on this one, the first thing we need to do is we need to identify A, B, and C. Now on B, A is going to be 3. B is going to be this -17. That negative sign goes with it. And C is this -20. And for fun, we'll just box up the 3 as well. Okay. So we'll start our X method. And I need to take the 3 times the -20. Okay. So to make this a little bit easier to see, let's go ahead and take those away. Okay. So that's going to be -60. And the B is -17. Again, you get really good at this from repetition and practice. There is a lot of steps, but you can do it. Okay. I have to find 2 numbers that multiply to -60 that add up to -17. Ooh. So that tells me one has to be positive and one has to be negative. Let's make a note here, positive and negative. Okay, let's do this over to the right here. Let's think 60. What makes 60? Well, 1 and 60, 2 and 30, 3 and 20, 4 and 15, 6 and 10, and somewhere along the way you were going, Ms. Barnes, stop. It's 3 and 20. How do we know it's 3 and 20? Well, the only way I can get 17 out of any pair of those numbers is 3 and 20. 20 minus 3 is 17. There's that number sense again. Now, if I have to add up to -17, I need more negatives than positives. Okay. So that's what it looks like. Now, I'm ready for the next step. So I'm going to bring down my 3x squared. And I'm going to bring down my -20. And I'm going to put the 2 numbers that I just used with an x. So 3x minus 20x. And now what I do is I look at the first 2 and I look for the greatest common factor. They both have a 3 and they both have an x. And that leaves behind an x plus 1. See, 3x times x and 3x times 1 will equal 3x squared and 3x. Okay. All right, over here, they both have a -20. So if I take a -20 out, I should be left with an x plus 1. So our factors are going to be x plus 1 and 3x minus 20. See, x plus 1 appears in both, and that leaves the 3x and the -20. And I'm done, because all it said was to factor. Okay, so that is the X method. Okay, we were able to kind of condense those there. If you have questions, I've got another video that I'm gonna share with you, but revisit the process that we went through together in this video. You'll get the hang of it. Again, it's a lot of steps. Think about maybe what you want to do, later on in life. Are you going to deal with a number of steps? Okay, a lot of thinking steps going on here, a lot of number steps. But again, hey, you can do it. You got to be persistent with it, and you got to exhibit that grit. Okay, it does take some work, but you're up to the challenge, I know.